So hi everyone, I am Sarah Young. I am a member of the KraftHeinz Culinary team, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. On Cooking Together, we are going to be doing something a little bit different today, where we're going live with one of our favorite recipe bloggers, Stacey Little. He is the host of The Southern Bite, and we are going to be making a slow cooker zesty Italian pot roast together. So I'm going to toss it over to Stacey to start getting cooking, and we're just gonna chat along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us an intro there. All right, so we're gonna start with, I've got a skillet that's preheated here. We're gonna put a sear on our 3-pound chuck roast. And rather than just putting oil in here, we're gonna use about 2 tablespoons of Kraft Zesty Italian dressing. And I think this is such a smart idea because it's the great opportunity to add more flavor rather than oil, which really wouldn't give it a whole lot of flavor.
Exactly. This is a tip that we love to use in the test kitchens. We have lots of recipes that start by cooking the meat or vegetables in our really flavorful Kraft salad dressing. So zesty is a great flavorful base for this Italian style pot roast. And additionally, browning the meat before we're putting it into the slow cooker is just going to establish that great layer of flavor. So,
right. So what I've done here,
that looks so good.
I've just dabbed the outside of our roast with some paper towels just to get all the excess moisture off. It'll allow us to get more of that brown golden color on there, which of course is going to add tons of flavor. So this is going to need to brown for about 5 minutes on each side. Of course, we don't have the luxury of 5 minutes for each side, so we're going to do a really good job of getting a nice sear on it as quickly as we can.
And you're at about medium-high heat, aren't you?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so sometimes it's been hard lately to find all of the meats that I've looked for at the grocery store. I think that we just want to let people know that if you can't find a chuck roast, you could use like a chuck eye roast. You could use a chuck shoulder. Whatever your grocery store has. I think the one thing that we want to make sure everyone knows is that you don't want to choose something that's too lean, because this is going to be in the slow cooker for about 8 hours, and a leaner cut of meat will have a tendency to dry out. So that's really the bonus with some of these slow cooker dinners is you can buy those inexpensive cuts of meat because they are usually a little bit fattier, and they need that time to cook down in the slow cooker. So take advantage of the fact that this is a value and a way to save a little bit of money.
Absolutely. And the thing that I like about this also is that you really can feed lots of folks with this meal.
Absolutely. I think that that's one of the things that people sometimes forget. I mean, these slow cooker meals, a lot of times you start with a pretty big piece of meat. So it's almost like a real no stress way to entertain a big group of people, because you can actually serve things right out of a slow cooker if you need to. So it sort of cuts down on having to dirty up a bunch of other dishes. For other times when I've had big crowds over, it's just so easy to put out the slow cooker and have everyone kind of go down the buffet line.
Right, absolutely. I think there's something comforting, too, about a slow cooker meal that I love. And the added benefit is you have just a little work in the morning, and you come home a few hours later, and supper's ready.
It is. So that's looking really good. You have a nice sear on both sides.
Yep. We're going to transfer this. Now, this is a 6-quart slow cooker that I've sprayed with a little non-stick cooking spray. We're just going to put our roast right on the inside there. To that, we're going to add 3 cups of carrots that we've peeled and chopped.
Awesome.
I've got an onion also that I've peeled and chopped. Now, do you have a preference in terms of onion type, or does it really matter to you?
I tend to buy yellow onions or sweet Vidalia onions just because, for a roast like this, they're already going to absorb all of that beef flavor. Usually I save the red onions and stuff for fresh salads where I really want, that beautiful purple color. I think red onions are some of the most beautiful onions. So I love putting them, in fresh salads.
Right, right. So this is an opportunity where you can pick the onion that's on sale that day, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, all right. So let's start with our sauce. I've got a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes in my bowl here. To that, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of Lee & Perrins Worcestershire sauce. Now say that word for me because I don't want to be the only one.
The hardest word to say.
Worcestershire on Instagram Live today. All right. We're going to add this right to it. We're also going to add, the recipe calls for a tablespoon of the Weiler's beef granules. Now, I will say they were a little hard for me to source. I know, some people, like we were talking about with the meat, are having trouble to find. So you tell me if this is great or not. But I actually took just 3 regular cubes and I crushed them between 2 spoons, and it gave me a tablespoon of the granules. Hopefully that'll work.
I think that's a great tip.
In a pinch, maybe, somebody might already have that in their pantry as well.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing. I mean, a lot of you watching are probably noticing that most of these things are pantry staples. So you probably have a lot of these things hanging around in your refrigerator or your pantry. And if you don't have Zesty Italian dressing, you could really use any salad dressing that you want.
And like I said before, that's such a great opportunity to add extra flavor. I just love how smart that is. All right, 2 bay leaves are going to go right in the top of this to give us even more flavor. And then we're going to pour this sauce that we made with the crushed tomatoes right over the top.
Perfect. And that's going to be just the right amount of liquid to really, nicely braise this this chuck roast. Make it nice and tender. Honestly, I am a full-time working mom, and a lot of times I will take it to exactly where you're at right now the night before. And because, searing something in the morning when I'm trying to get breakfast on the table and all of that, it's actually a little bit too much. So a lot of times I'll just do it the night before, pop it in the fridge, and all I have to do is drop that insert into my slow cooker, and it's really great. The one thing that I do make sure is that after I sear the meat, I do let it cool and everything before I put that insert in my fridge overnight, but it saves me so much time. It's almost like delivery, except, when you come home from work, your house smells absolutely amazing, and food delivery doesn't really deliver that for you. So.
Right, that's exactly. I know. That's my favorite thing about slow cooker meals is you do the little bit of work in the morning and you come home and the whole house is filled with that smell, and you realize, oh, wow, I don't have to do any more work. It's already done for me.
It is truly the biggest sense of relief, especially when I know I have a really busy day. It's like a breath of fresh air when I come in, that it's just something I don't have to worry about. Because I really enjoy, cooking for my family each night. But realistically, I don't always have the time. So if I can put in like 5 to 10 minutes of work the night before, it makes the biggest difference.
Well, and I love that this one is so easy. I've seen a lot of other roast recipes that can be a lot more complicated, and this one is just so easy. And I love the tomato component. That's not one that you see a whole lot. At least I've not seen a whole lot of in a slow cooker roast recipe, but I love the flavor that comes out of this. So I've got the lid on here. We're going to cook this on low for 8 to 10 hours or on high for 5 to 6.
Perfect.
And of course, through the magic.
What? I think a lot of people think that slow cookers are only for cold weather months, but I actually think it's one of those things that you can use all year round, because it can bring you those comforting dishes in the winter, but it can also allow you to not have to turn on your oven in the summer months. So it's a great way to get dinner on the table.
Well, and, I can attest to that, being a Southerner and, it being 4,000 degrees during the summer. We love any opportunity to not have to turn on the stove and the oven and heat the house up. So that's, you know, I say that all the time. It's such a great way to cook dinner during the summer and not make everything so hot, right? All right, so this one, I did exactly like you said. I prepped it the night before. I kept it in the refrigerator. I got up and popped it in. So we've got one ready just to show everybody here.
Oh my gosh, that looks great.
Let me grab
So
these.
you mentioned that you really like the tomato component of this dish. And that's, remember back at the beginning when I said that we had that great recipe? Once you plate this up, let's chat about that second recipe. I feel like the tomato component is really important for that leftovers recipe.
Absolutely. I just removed those bay leaves. They give us great flavor, but we don't want to eat those. And then you can see the carrots are cooked perfectly. You know, I find a lot of times things in the slow cooker end up kind of cooking to mush, but these are perfect.
Yeah, I think you can play around with how big you know, it's really like how big you or small you cut your vegetables. So if you like them to have, you know, a little bit more bite, cutting them into bigger pieces, but those look absolutely perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to make that point in the beginning, you know, that leaving them in bigger chunks mean it's going to take a little bit longer and they're not going to quite. And look, you can just see how completely tender. I can barely slice it. It's so tender.
You know, it's interesting. I actually really loved using my slow cooker when my kids were young. And actually, I mean, even still now, because it makes it so tender. Meat is sometimes really hard for kids to eat. And so I think, you know, using a slow cooker to really get super tender meat is great for families with young kids.
Absolutely. You know, that's something that I hadn't thought a whole lot about, but I do remember my son when he was younger, this was one of those things that he always enjoyed. And I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
Plus the vegetables are so flavorful because they've been sitting in that, you know, unbelievably flavorful liquid for 8 hours that what kid could resist a carrot that
right, that's
has
exactly
that much flavor.
Exactly it. Well, you know, in the beginning you were mentioning about how we can cook once and eat twice, right?
Yes.
So I happen to have some crusty French bread here. You know what we're going to do with this, right? We're going to turn leftovers into sandwiches, right? So in the South, especially in the New Orleans area, we have debris po' boys. And what that is it's essentially all the stuff that's left after you cook a roast. And this is the perfect opportunity to do that, to use this roast that's so tender and juicy and some of the gravy and serve it on a roll. And it pairs perfectly, works perfectly for another meal during the week.
I love that. And, you know, up here in Chicago, we love, you know, our Italian beef. And one thing that I always ask for whenever I go and get one is I always ask for them to drizzle some of that juice over the crusty rolls. It just makes it so flavorful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That, as far as I'm concerned, that's the only way to eat them. Now, I might get yelled at, but I agree with you.
I think they usually ask you if you want it dipped or not dipped, right?
Yeah, and the answer is dipped for sure.
That looks amazing.
Yeah, it's the perfect
and you could
thing
put
to
some
do with
cheese
leftovers.
on there. You could even have some, you know, you could cook up some bell peppers. You could grill them or just cook them in a skillet. Put those on top. That would probably be amazing as well.
Well, and that's a you know, another opportunity to completely reinvent this, where, you know, it doesn't really taste like roast anymore. You add those other elements that are super easy to do, and you've turned it into something entirely different.
That looks really, really amazing.
And like I said before, you know, being one that has not had a super rich tomato-based sauce, I was super impressed with this. It certainly will be making it into the rotation at our house.
I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Stacey, for joining me.
Absolutely.
And thank you to all of you for tuning in. Until then, let's just keep cooking together.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.